Sports gambling is a $100 billion industry and shows no signs of slowing down. However, 2 MLB pitchers were just indicted for allegedly fixing individual pitches to help gamblers win prop bets. On the flip side of that, other players who are not involved in fixing schemes are still being harassed by gamblers who lost money simply because that player didn't perform up to their expectations. Baseball is in a new and genuine quagmire here. There's a lot of revenue to be had, but there's also a lot of personal risk for players. Despite that revenue and that personal risk, none of this is mentioned in the current CBA agreement. I'm Mike Whitmire, co-founder and CEO of FloQast, inactive CPA, and a very concerned baseball fan who does not want to see a lockout in 2027. Today we're tackling what I consider the sleeper issue of these negotiations. Why is it the sleeper issue? Well, number one, nothing is documented as part of the current CBA around it. And number two, who knows how to predict how much revenue could come from gambling? The revenue for MLB would come in the form of probably sponsorships or partnerships with the big gambling companies, DraftKings, FanDuel, Kalshi, and Polymarket. They would come along and say, hey, baseball, we want to be the preferred vendor of choice for all of your gambling needs. And they would pay MLB some dollar amount every year to be that preferred partner. Now, under the current rules, MLB and the owners would keep all of that revenue. Now, conversely, there is a risk of gambling revenue just being zero. Maybe as a society, we decide, hey, all this legalized gambling isn't a good thing. Or maybe the money that MLB actually makes off of these partnerships is so minimal that really no one cares and it doesn't matter. As part of this round of negotiations, owners should agree to share a part of whatever that gambling revenue might look like going forward.
I look at gambling revenue, I can argue both ways. I can make a bull case like none other, a huge upside there. I also think it's hyper risky because of some of the player things that are going on right now, particularly around prop bets. So if you're putting together a forecast around gambling revenue, probably assigning a risk factor to that. But in my mind, it's pretty extreme because what if as a society, we're like, nope, gambling, turns out it's not good for everyone. People are going bankrupt.
Yeah, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to be hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Now, before we talk about the opportunity with gambling, I do want to address the risk. When we think about the opportunity, it could be high, it could go to zero. I don't know, really difficult to predict. What I am confident predicting is that player safety will continue to be an issue because gambling will be a thing. I don't think it's going to get any better, and we need to think about that as part of these negotiations. Now, player safety as it relates to gambling is nothing new. We have many cases of point shaving to help teams win games, but what's unique about this point in time is that player props are so popular. That's what's really emerging, is you can bet on the smallest micro player props, and that's what creates the danger. So in the example of the relief pitchers we discussed, on the first pitch of an at-bat, are they throwing a ball or a strike? That's simple. It's very easy as a player to justify, hey, I can go out there and throw a ball on the first pitch. It's not going to screw my team. We're not going to lose the game because of it. And I will make some money, or the people behind me will make some money. So that creates really strong incentive without having to take on all the risk of maybe throwing an entire game. So with that, we have more of a propensity for players to be involved in this area. A fan might bet on a player to hit, let's say, 2 home runs in a game. They miss out on their bet. The fan gets pissed, maybe they slide in the DMs, they start making threats. That's a very real concern, and it's already happening to players. In my interview with Dan Runzler, former MLB player, the concern about player safety and gambling really stuck with me.
They're worried about their wives and their kids coming to games. You can take getting yelled at and being, whatever, by fans. That's part of what we sign up for. That's fine. You can get laughed at, you can be razzing. I don't care. But if you start threatening my wife or my kid, I think you take it to a new level. But if you're on a 21-year-old kid or 23-year-old kid or someone, you find out somebody's life story where he's going through a divorce or whatever's going on, people will find a way to make money. And you just don't want to put the vulnerability in the player's hands.
So that is the human cost of gambling revenue. And Dan's proposed fix was simple. Carve out a portion of that gambling revenue and dedicate it to security for players, friends, and family. So I view baseball as actually one of the most American capitalistic sports. However, that has produced a lot of inequality, and we need to think more centrally, centralize that revenue, share it more equally so that we can arrive at a more fair financial situation. That is Rob Manfred's goal, is to centralize the revenue from all 30 teams and their media rights by 2028. I think gambling revenue gives him a unique opportunity to actually make that happen.
Yeah, that's a bold timeline for sure. But MLB's done a good job of doing what they'll say they were going to do. And I think pace of play and shortening the games has already gone a long way in sort of optimizing their demographic, bringing younger fans into the mix, etc. So who's to say that they can't hit that?
If Manfred pulls this off, it's transformational and can solve a lot of the problems. But how is he actually going to do this? Well, this is the part where being an accountant actually matters. Revenue classification is a large part of what we deal with. How do we classify revenue and how do we share it? It would require creating a new entity. Let's call it MLB Frontier, which is a forward-looking entity that captures shared TV revenue as well as future revenue streams. Let me walk you through it. So as we've discussed, regional sports networks are the main source of inequality within baseball, and that's where the idea of MLB Frontier comes into play. What does that look like? Well, phase one is already happening. The regional sports networks for many teams are collapsing, going out of business, and MLB has come in, taken over the rights to those teams, and is bearing the cost to produce the games and distribute them on TV. You can't have a situation where 10 teams just simply are not televised. So MLB, out of necessity and out of opportunity, has come in and taken over production there. We can begin to put the TV rights for each team into MLB Frontier and move those rights in and start to share the revenue from those TV rights equally across all the teams who have opted into MLB Frontier. We're then able to take the TV rights from these teams, build a direct-to-consumer product. Maybe we offer it on MLB TV, maybe we distribute via YouTube. It's on proper television, but MLB can charge directly to have those rights given to fans, and there are no blackout restrictions. And if we can eliminate that, we start to give a better fan experience as well. So as we build out the rights to more teams, one of the things we can do is bring in partners to invest in this entity and share a portion of it. I'm thinking really the distributors like Amazon, Apple, Google. They want rights to distribute these games, and if we give them the opportunity to buy into it, it gives them the rights to distribute and gives MLB Frontier additional capital up front to go ahead and try to convince more teams to join MLB Frontier. The big market teams is where we have a really big problem. We need to buy them out from their regional sports deals, and that is where that capital that we get from Amazon, Apple, Google comes into play. We can go to the Dodgers and we can say, you have 12 years left on your TV contract, it's worth X billion dollars. We'll buy you out of that all today. And we can put a spreadsheet together where we take a look at what revenue they're going to get under today's agreement, what revenue they would get from MLB Frontier. We can take the difference of that, we can net present value the whole thing out, and we can give the Dodgers a lump sum up front, or we can figure out a way to give them incrementally more revenue over time. Whatever the mechanics are, they'll exist because we have more revenue within MLB Frontier. The more revenue is really important. A lot of that is also going to come from that gambling revenue that we've discussed. So by putting more gambling revenue into MLB Frontier, it just gives more juice to be able to go out and buy out those big market teams. So earlier in the series, I explained how a salary cap is mathematically impossible because of the inequality we have in revenue. By coming up with this concept of MLB Frontier, hopefully funded by gambling revenue, we're able to eliminate that inequality, centralize the revenue, and have both the owners and the players in a position to actually discuss a reasonable salary cap arrangement. Now, if gambling takes off and there's a bunch of revenue that comes from it, it allows for the acceleration of that concept to occur. If gambling revenue doesn't take off, it goes to zero. It's going to be a longer road to get there, but I still think it's very possible to make that happen. So the means for incentivizing the big market teams to join, whether that's offering a disproportionate amount of equity or a disproportionate amount of revenue for a period of time to buy them out, I pitched that idea to Sean during our interview.
There's a precedent for that in sports. In college football, you've seen certain schools within a conference get a weighted share. International soccer, you certainly see that. Real Madrid and Barcelona are getting higher share of the media rights contract than some of the smaller teams because in theory they're driving more eyeballs. And there's beyond the theory, there's numbers and metrics that go into that and go into the formulas. I do think it'd be hard to go to that construct in MLB when it's a departure from what they've had. So yeah, that's why it's one of the most fascinating aspects of how MLB goes forward. And the good news is NBA, NHL, they've got regional sports networks as well and teams doing local broadcast and revenue, etc. So they aren't in a unique spot in that way. And these leagues can kind of survey each other, lean on each other for insight and that kind of thing. And they more often do than people would probably imagine.
So with this idea, you're handing the Players Association a guaranteed share of what might become the fastest growing revenue stream in sports. So Rob Manfred has a stated goal of centralizing all revenue by 2028. I don't think the timeline is realistic. I think the idea needs to be pursued. The negotiations we have today are going to set us up for what those future negotiations look like. And if we ultimately want to arrive at a salary cap, we need to do things the right way today. So if the players don't demand clarity on where gambling revenue goes, the inequality is going to get worse and a salary cap will never happen. And that's the reason I believe this is a sleeper issue of these negotiations. How we handle it in 2026 will set in motion whether we have a salary cap in 2032 or 2035. So we really need to think through this, make sure everything's on the table and we're doing it the right way this year.